Collective punishment. Especially in school. That is how you get students to hate you. Being told to do something I was already going to do. Zero tolerance rules, the scourge of the fucking earth. Someone comes up and hits you, you've done nothing wrong, yet you're equally reprimanded because you were involved. By that logic, in a school shooting, the victims should get expelled too. When people in my family leave out the fucking block of cheese, on the counter, unwrapped. Not only does it get soft, it fucking dries up so it has to have then ends cut off. Like what the fuck? When my uncle telling me to find God, because he thinks my job is sinful. I'm a college student working at a restaurant. Stupid rules enforced by stupid people. In grade school, I had two really close friends named Juan and Nick. Here is a picture of us that I love with me in the front, then Juan, and then Nick. The three of us were really close and bonded of our shared nerdy interests of reading, Star Wars, and The Simpsons. We also really enjoyed drawing. I don't remember how it started exactly, but we ended up making this notebook that we passed back and forth between us. It was a comic about a guy named Tom and his cat. We would each take turns doing a strip of a few panels, and then hand it over. Here is a quick drawing I did of Tom on my phone, so you can get an idea of what he looked like. The comic was about the everyday life of Tom, and it was extremely mundane. It was things like Tom tries to decide on a shirt, or Tom dropped the cat food on the floor. It was really dumb stuff, but the three of us found it so hilarious, because we were weird kids. One day our teacher caught us with the notebook, and confiscated it from us. It was a bummer because there are tons of dumb comics in that notebook, but we figured maybe we could get it back later. We waited a week, and then asked her if we could get it back, and she said she lost it. I'm still super salty about even after all these years, because I would love to have that notebook still. Littering, just hold onto your shit for 5 minutes, then bin it at home, it's not hard. The fact that we had to ask to go to the bathroom, and were sometimes told no. That a vending machine can take my money, and not deliver the item. People saying you're too young to feel depressed and horrible anxiety. I see it way too much today, especially coming from someone who went through it as a kid and teenager. When I was maybe 6 to 7 years old, I was a super shy and timid kid. People could easily tell with my body language and the way I would stand. My dad was running errands and needed to go to the post office, so he took me along. The line was super long, going out the door, and so he told me to wait in the line, while he went and filled out some of the shipping info/paperwork. After about 10 minutes, this old lady in front of me, and this old dude behind me start talking about me. "Ha, have you ever seen a kid in the post office line?" "Why no, I never have, I wonder what he's doing here." Basically, they were making feel super uncomfortable, and they kept it going until I couldn't take it anymore. So I end up stepping out of line to find my dad. OFC, my dad gets pissed I stepped out of the line, spanks me, and basically drags my ass back to the end of the line again, while that old dude and lady got a smug look on their face. It didn't hit me until I was like 12 years old that they had done it intentionally so they could move up in the line. Now every time I think about it, I just see red. Like, how fucked up was it to do that to a kid? Fucking asswipes. The condescending tone of an adult talking to a kid. It's like, kids are people and deserve respect too. Mom demands an explanation for something. Me starts explaining. Mom cuts me off well. Like, bitch, let me fucking finish. I hate being interrupted by people to this day. I've pissed her off several times since then by telling her don't interrupt me when she cuts me off. I'm trying to stop doing it too, but at least I apologize when I realize I'm doing it, and tell the other person to go on. When you are damned when you do, damned when you don't, and the points don't matter. Being mean to animals. I don't want to hear excuses for why you're late. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. I'm not saying I'm guilt-free, I just want everyone to be on the same page. People chewing loudly and/or scraping their silverware on their teeth. One time in first grade a teacher yelled at me, and gave me detention, because she saw someone with a similar coat walk up the wrong side of the stairs. Asking what's for dinner, and being told food. Nah. Really? We're having food? I never would have guessed. There is this artist who inspires me a lot since I was young, though back then she was very underrated. I've always told my friends to check her out and such, but they never really bothered to. But after a few projects of her became popular, suddenly all of my friends are like, oh hey, you should check this artist out. She's amazing. Or you need to know who she is, she's a very talented artist. And other shit like that. I mean, I'm happy that she got the attention she deserved, but this shit really pisses me off. Okay, this will take some explaining. You know that thing in movies or television shows where someone will walk in on someone else seemingly doing something wrong, but the audience knows it's just a misunderstanding. I hate that there's never a moment later on where the misunderstanding is cleared up. This happens all the time in romantic comedies, for example, but they're in all kinds of things, from kid shows to adult shows. Like the main girl in a rom-com will come home early to surprise the main guy, and she'll catch him with his ex-girlfriend or something. We as an audience know that he was just telling her off or something like that, but it always looks like something's fishy. I'm totally fine with that happening, but there's never any scene in which that misunderstanding is corrected. Well, I really hate this story. It fucked up a lot. I was in just second grade. And I was in my class, I was just walking around. I had my arms on my head and a girl was walking by, and as I was putting my arms down I accidentally hit her. I said sorry, but she told the teacher. The teacher said it was on purpose, and told the school to send a social worker to look at my house. Till this day, no one believes it was an accident, and they make me speak with a lady every month. The only reason I still have to speak with her is because I won't say it was on purpose. It's been more than 7 years. Thinking about it pisses me off. The fact that when I came home from the mental hospital for a suicide attempt at 14, my parents grounded me for being in the hospital. Their exact words were, "We're grounding you for putting us through that pain." All I could think in that moment is, and you wonder why I'm suicidal in the first place. And before the hospital, when I was self-harming, when they found out, they took my horse riding lessons away as a punishment. Still a kid, but sexism in general, both sides, but not enough attention, is given to men who have been raped or falsely accused of it. It's generally biased, and it pisses me off. It genuinely would bring me to the brink of tears if I think about it more. There's so many problems and not enough people to solve them. People purposefully spelling things wrong because they think it's cute. It's absolutely not. It's annoying. 2 Tales from Kindergarten. Part 1. It was coloring time. We had each been handed a sheet with a large giraffe to color in with crayons. The teacher had an assistant this day, probably a teacher in training. I was neutral to her at this point. I carefully selected my crayons, yellow and brown, and began coloring in the giraffe like a civilized 4-year-old. As I worked away diligently, keeping each color within its borders, I looked around, and saw my comrades haphazardly scribbling away with reckless abandon. Those didn't look like any giraffes I had ever seen pictures of. I was called away to help a kid write his name on his completed abomination. He hadn't quite worked out the capital R. When I returned to my work in progress, I found to my horror the assistant scribbling in the rest of my giraffe, because drawing time was over, and I wasn't finished. I was speechless. My rights had been violated. The injustice has stuck with me ever since. Part 2. Another day, it's craft time. I was excited. We were going to be making kites. We gathered into a line and began collecting our assigned materials. I reached the teacher's desk and received several feet of red yarn and an empty white grocery bag. I became suspicious. We were then instructed to tie one end of the red yarn to one of the handles of the plastic bag. And then go outside and fly, that's it. I took my new pet bag out into the schoolyard and looked around. My comrades were running around holding the end of their red yarn with bags flapping around behind them. I decided to suck it up and give it a go. I began to run, bag in tow, lifting the tether as high as I could. It was pathetic. I felt ashamed. This is not a kite. I'm dragging around a plastic bag like an idiot, and it's their fault. I didn't like kindergarten much. When people say I could care less when what they really mean is that they couldn't, as in could not, care less. Makes no sense. In second grade I taught a kid I thought was a friend the word shit with the agreement that if I taught him a dirty word that he wouldn't use it in front of anyone that would get me in trouble or say I taught it to him. What does the shit do? He writes it on artwork that he has to turn in. The teacher starts grilling him on where he learned it, and he rats me out. I explained that knowing a word is no crime, and it was information traded under the agreement that he wouldn't use it. I even claimed that if I sold a gun to somebody, and they committed murder that I wouldn't be liable for arming them. I am not joking, that was my argument. She disagreed, and had me swap my green kangaroo for a yellow one on the behavior chart. There is a bright side to this story since we had a substitute the next day, and I was able to right the injustice. Since I almost never swapped my kangaroo color, no one called me out on it. I did get asked later by a classmate, and I said that what they remember happened the week before. I got in trouble with a teacher for yawning once in elementary school. She said it was rude and made me do write-ups on the board for it. Wouldn't bother me if I actually was yawning to be rude, but I wasn't, and I didn't know how to control my yawning at the time, or how to yawn without making noise. I was just tired. Having credit taken from me. Getting given blame. Injustice is a shit time. My dad smacked me on the back of my head hard enough to knock me over on a few different occasions. I remember each time vividly. I've struggled with internalized toxic shame because of it my whole life, and never really forgave him for it even though he's tried to take care of me in other ways. He's kind of a mixed bag of a parent, which is somehow more frustrating than if he'd been a complete deadbeat dad, because I can't justify totally hating him outright. I've always been jealous of people with great parents, and a chronic feeling of optimism and self-love. That people baby talk children. They don't tell them the whole truth. Kids are born wanting to know, and we lie to them, coddle them, and keep them from finding out things. Then they get hit with reality all at once when they're 18. We even threaten them with it when we're mad at them. But we still don't tell them the truth. We expect them to magically grow up through studying hard and keeping out of trouble. And we call this preparation. Level with kids. Not in a cruel way, just honest. Make sure they get a real education about history, not the fake history they teach in school. Does your kid know about the Tulsa Massacre? or that Venice was a slave market during the Middle Ages. Make sure they know the last names of their family members, not just Aunt Rita. And make sure they know the horrible secrets in your family, like who got murdered and whether there was justice for it. Finally, figure out a way to make sex not sound like it's just about avoiding STDs. Destroying your kids' chances of ever trusting someone by terrifying them with disease fear is not a good idea. Well, that's all the stuff that still annoys me about how the adults around me acted when I was a kid. I knew it was trash at the time, and as I got older I was proved right. Although at the time, when I was that young, I didn't know the details I know now. When I did find out, I got more angry than before. When I was a kid, I just knew there was a void there, someone hiding something. Kids know, so just say it. They already distrust you when you avoid the topic. So just say it.